This week on Chicago Newsroom 2.0, Sufyan Sohel and Jeffery Beckham return to the roundtable to discuss parental pushback against the planned CTU Day of Action. The latest in the state's efforts to keep the Chicago Bears on this side of the Illinois-Indiana border, and the fundraising prowess of Chicago mayor hopefuls.
Matt Bruce from the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance joins us to discuss the new state initiative, Job Ready Illinois.
Faith in Places Reverend Nicolette Faison is here to talk about the organization's tree canopy and workforce community grants.
And Chicago Latino Theater Alliance's Jorge Valdivia stops by to talk about the upcoming Chicago Latine Playwright Festival. I'm Dee Atkins.
And I'm Dr. Suzet McKinney. We've put together an incredible hour of local news and information that matters most to Chicagoans.
And it all starts right now.
Tonight on Chicago Newsroom 2.0, we're diving into 3 stories that speak directly to the intersection of politics, power, and public trust here in Chicago. First, growing tension around the upcoming May 1st Day of Action led by the Chicago Teachers Union and Chicago Public Schools. What organizers describe as a moment of advocacy is facing some pushback from parents and community members who worry about disruption in classrooms and the broader message it sends as the school year heads into its final stretch. Then, down in Springfield, Illinois, the fight to keep the Chicago Bears in Illinois is heating up once again. Lawmakers are weighing new proposals and incentives, but with competing visions, taxpayer concerns, and regional politics all in play, the question remains, what will it actually take to keep the Bears from leaving, and who ultimately pays the price? And finally, the early maneuvering in what could become one of the most competitive Chicago mayoral races in recent memory. Potential candidates are already ramping up fundraising efforts, building coalitions, and testing messages. We'll look at who's gaining traction, where the money is coming from, and what it all signals about the road ahead for City Hall. Joining me to unpack it all are roundtable regulars Sufyan Sohel, chair of the Cook County Commission on Human Rights, and Jeffery Beckham, CEO of Chicago Scholars. Sufyan and Jeffery, welcome back to the roundtable.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Let's dive right in. So, the Chicago Teachers Union is framing May 1st as a day of action that they are describing as advocacy. But some parents see it as a disruption. Do you think this is a breakdown in trust between schools and families, or just the reality of labor activism in public education? Jeffery, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think that, when I think about activism, and oftentimes in communities of color, and low-income communities of color in particular, activism and volunteerism almost go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. There's almost a bit of a duty. And I see it as an educational opportunity for the young people to learn and understand what civic responsibility and civic action really means. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I also understand parents' frustration and concern with regard to making it seem as if we're using our young people as out front as a political message, right? And, in the end of the day, and I'm gonna sound like my brother here, the kids get hurt, they become the collateral damage. Mm-hmm. So I will, my hope is that we can figure this out, get it together so that kids can get a good experience and they can learn from something that could be very positive as well.
Sure. Sufyan?
I appreciate you saying that. And I want to push a little bit because, right now we're seeing so much in the world in our communities around us, right? We're seeing people going hungry and homeless and without health care. We're seeing things like Cuba, fascism, ICE, Gaza, like you name it. People are personally affected by it. They're planning a day. It's not like they're just all waking up one day and texting each other and being like, we're going to do a day of action today. School system, the schools, CTUs, CPS, they all have had so much time to prepare for this. And what better lesson that our students need right now than how to fight back when things are wrong in our systems. We'll fight back when we're being threatened day by our government and by so many external forces than modeling something like this. Yeah.
Well, let me follow up to that. With CPS already navigating academic recovery and attendance challenges, what impact, though, could this have on students? I mean, is there a better way to balance activism with classroom stability?
I think activism can be used as classroom educational experiences, right? If they I don't know what they have planned. I don't know what the day looks like, but it could be such a great learning opportunity for the students that they could build into the classroom component of it and use that to show what civic engagement looks like.
That's actually an interesting concept. Advocacy as an extension of learning. What are your thoughts there?
I love it. And I think that as I think about the structure of the day, what I would ask is you're not protesting the entire day. Is there a world where we can mix some in-classroom learning, write a report, do something to generate a learning experience from it? So tie it to the pedagogy of instruction happening inside of the classroom. We do have a massive problem with chronic absenteeism in Chicago. A Better Chicago released a report a few weeks ago that talks about as many as 40% of Chicago public school students were classified as chronically absent, missing 10 or more in-classroom learning days. And so while I don't think one day out of school will be harmful, I do think if you can tie it to a way to learn and increase learning and instruction, it will help all of our kids. There's reading opportunities in this. So many things that we can do to bring this into the classroom to make it a win-win for the parents, the students, and the kids.
So with regard, did you have another comment?
No, I was just going to say is we've seen and we're watching every day a suppression of First Amendment, free speech against all of freedom of press, all of these things. And if we're going to model that as our system of hey, this is going to be disruption, don't do that, what are we showing not only our students, but our communities that we don't stand up for these rights that we have?
Sure. So in terms of the parental pushback that we're seeing with regards to this day of action, do you think we're seeing a shift in public sentiment toward the CTU, sort of, especially among parents who were more aligned with the union during the pandemic years?
Yeah, I do. And I think some of it, be calling it out, is directly tied to CTU's relationship to the current mayoral administration. For whatever you like, good or bad, there has always been somewhat of a connotation around that relationship that could lead to some challenges. And I think parents that sit at home have strong feelings one way or the other, and then they reflect that to how they see CTU. It was a lot of positive sentiment around the teachers union during the pandemic. And I'm grateful for so many of our educators who did honestly risk their life during that time. It feels like a lot of that has evaporated. And I think there needs to be some kind of way to bring us back together to have conversations around the future of education, the future of learning, that make the most sense and are inclusive of our amazing teachers in the city, because we have a lot of great teachers in the city. They deserve positive will, good intention, and good intent. But these things that happen tend to eviscerate that at times.
Okay, so speaking of the mayor and this current administration, politically, how do you think this moment affects the mayor and CPS leadership? Are they being forced to choose between labor allies and frustrated families? What are your thoughts there? Why don't we start with you, Sufyan?
I think we're in an era in Chicago where everything is political. I think, unfortunately, the mayor's in a place where he loses just no matter what he does. So I think it will be a challenge, whichever way they choose to support this.
Yeah, I think it is a very difficult situation with the mayors. Understanding that the coalition that put him in office is the one that he may have to make a choice, a difficult choice, pro or for or against. But, I've heard it said many times, there's the coalition that got you there, then governing for the people in the entire city. And I do think there's a way to do this. The problem is that there's so much, strong feelings on both sides with regard to labor right now in our city that every decision feels like it's a fight, a war of the roses of sorts.
Well, we're going to come back to the mayoral issue, but before we touch that a little deeper, let's talk about the Bears and what's happening down in Springfield. So the Illinois House has now passed a mega projects bill that is designed to help keep the bears in state by allowing negotiated property tax structures and long-term tax certainty. Do you think this represents smart economic strategy or perhaps a risky precedent, I should say, for cutting deals with billion-dollar franchises?
I mean, I think it's a risky precedent, but I also understand that every city does this now, right? When you talk about major franchises, building the stadiums, it's all jockeying for position. And the question is not whether you negotiate, it's if you negotiate well. And I think that therein lies and probably lives a lot of the challenges that so many people have with what's going on with the mega projects bill. I will say I am very much so pro keeping the bears in Illinois, but I think it's just got to be done with smart guardrails.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all pro keeping the bears here in Illinois. My question then becomes, if you pass a bill for this mega project, what about all the other mega projects that are in line? So.
Agreed. I am not, just to put it out there, just to say, like, even if the Bears go to Hammond or the Bears go, and wherever they are in the state of Illinois, they're still going to be called Chicago Bears. People aren't going to stay in Hammond to go watch them. The economic benefits are still going to be to Chicago, right? People are going to stay in hotels here, spend their money, go out to bars and explore the culture of the city. So I'm less tied to, yes, it's nice to have a team, but I'm also concerned about, we talked about who pays the price and who benefits also from these decisions. Are we diverting funds from our schools, from public services, just to keep the bears in town? And where are we as a state and a city? And what should we be prioritizing right now?
Yeah.
Well, even if it were to pass, the bears are signaling that the bill may not go far enough, especially around infrastructure funding. So do you think that weakens Illinois' negotiating position as Indiana continues to get aggressive?
This is where I laugh at some of this. I don't know. I like Kevin Warren a ton. I think he's an amazing guy, right? This is a personal thing. But have you driven to the Wolf Lake site in Hammond, Indiana? Like, go spend 10 minutes out there. And I'm not trying to treat Indiana badly. However, it is a horrendous site to put a football stadium. So you talk about infrastructure and needing to build roads. I was even talking to a friend who does soil testing. They don't know if the Wolf Lake land can actually hold a stadium physically. There's not enough infrastructure built there with regard to plumbing and toilets to actually have enough for all, it's so bad. And so when I hear there's not enough dollars for infrastructure funding, you have $1 billion business that can generate and raise capital instantly. You can find the funding where you don't have to balance that on the backs of taxpayers. And if it costs dollars that should be going towards our classrooms, yeah, I'm with you. They can move to Hammond. They can move to Wisconsin. I want to keep them here. I love my Bears. But, I mean, there's money to find to get this done. It doesn't require taxpayers having to foot the bill.
Yes.
Well, people are asking, will they become the Hammond Bears? So I guess time will tell, right? Okay, so let's go back now to the issue of the mayor's race here in Chicago. So right now, there's a lot of discussion around who's in, who's not, who's raising money, how much money have they raised. Right now, the fundraising gap is striking. Alexi Janulius is sitting on roughly $18.3 million, while Mayor Johnson has just over $800,000 on hand. What does that disparity tell us about political strength this early, and is money already signaling vulnerability for the incumbent? Who wants to start?
I'm happy to. On one side, it could be that the mayor is too busy governing to be raising money, and for the Secretary of State, he's really intentional about wanting to run and win and prioritizing fundraising right now. Money helps, but also, as we saw in the Democratic Senate primary, money doesn't equal winning.
Sure.
Where he had the top contender at $30 million, and that didn't equate to him capturing the nomination from the Democrats. But I think at the end it matters who's going to be able to coalesce different communities, who's going to really be able to bridge the gap that we have from those hurting to business to academia and all the different sectors of government, and who's going to be able to share their story the best.
Sure.
Yeah, I concur. I think it's a flashing light for an incumbent mayor to have that big of a gap, but I also understand there's a huge difference in who the base of support is for those two candidates in particular. I don't think it's hard for Alexi, a former banker who has been tied to a lot of wealthy people over the years, to be able to raise that kind of dollars that quickly. He's also liked. I think that the question will become, where do the votes come from? And at the end of the day, we've seen, like you said, in recent campaigns that dollars don't necessarily equate to votes.
That's right. Well, other potential candidates are also quietly building their own war chest. Susana Mendoza, for example, with about $1.6 million, and Mike Quigley seems to have access to over $1 million in transferable funds. So do you think this points to a crowded, competitive field, or a lane opening for one dominant challenger?
I think it's going to be a crowded field for sure. What the mayor has is he's the mayor, right?
Sure.
And so he's going to be judged on whether or not he was successful in his work. Everyone else has to argue that they could do it better or differently. And I think it's still an uphill battle, I think, for them to do that argument. And who's going to be able to really connect, as Jeff said, get the votes and communicate with it. But I think it's going to be interesting. We're going to have a lot of people running.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift another question to you, Jeff. Someone that we've had here on the show fairly recently, business newcomer Joe Holberg. He has already raised over $500,000. And again, it's still very early. Jeff, how much do you think we should weigh grassroots or outsider fundraising results versus institutional backing from unions and other major donors?
I think the landscape in Chicago politics has shifted. I think Mayor Johnson's campaign showed you that, for one. And so I think a candidate like Joe Holberg presents an interesting prospect, right? Tech guy, very smart, very savvy, kind of positioning himself as a newcomer in the space. And having the ability to raise that amount of money from a lot of small dollar donors is impressive. It speaks to folks wanting to see something different. Yeah. So I'm excited to see all of the candidates come out. I think that this is going to be a crowded race, but we know Chicago politics are rarely linear. They compress after people get into the race over time. Dollars will talk. I'm starting to see like early social campaigns already that are being advertised towards me, hitting my sphere. But I do think it'll be a unique campaign where those small dollar donations, the new candidates, new ideas will rise to the surface.
Any closing thoughts on that particular question?
I'm excited, right? I am really excited to see what each of their visions are for Chicago and the future we can build. I think, and I'll say this over and over again, we're seeing unprecedented challenges, city, nationally, globally, and we need strong leadership who's going to make sure that our most vulnerable are protected, but while also thinking about the future economically of this city. And
That's right.
I think there's a lot of gaps that we currently see, and and what the interest and motivation behind these candidates is.
Well, I've heard you both say that in a Chicago mayoral race, and at this day and time, it's not necessarily the size of the war chest that makes the difference, but rather the coalition behind the candidate. So I think that means it's entirely possible that a candidate with less money but stronger field operations could still compete in a serious way.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting and quite a bit of a shift in what we've seen fairly recently in politics. So, well, as always, we always have more to talk about than we have time to talk about those things. So Jeffrey and Sufyan, thank you again for joining us here today. Always wonderful to have you at the round table.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
On the other side of the break, Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance's Matt Bruce joins Dee to talk about the new Job Ready Illinois initiative. Stay with us.
On the next episode of The Journey Continues, hosts Monica Fox and Sarah Jane Charles are joined by Marion Shuck, who shares the loss of her husband Reggie and her courageous decision to become a living kidney donor for her brother. One story, one family, a movement that saves lives. Tune in Thursday, May 7th at 7 p.m. on CanTV 19, cantv.org, the CanTV Plus app, or YouTube. Experience the power of community television.
Got something to say about Chicago? Now's your chance to be heard. Chicago Newsroom 2.0 is launching Opinion, a new segment where everyday Chicagoans take the mic. Whether it's a neighborhood issue that's been ignored, a citywide concern that needs attention, or a fresh idea that could change our city, we want to hear from you. Submit your commentary at cantv.org/opinion. If selected, we'll invite you on air to share your perspective with all of Chicago. Experience the power of community television.
As Illinois works to strengthen its workforce and meet the demands of a rapidly changing economy, state leaders are rolling out a new effort aimed at connecting more residents to quality jobs and helping employers find the talent they need to grow. It's called the Job Ready Illinois Initiative, and it's designed to align workforce training, education, and employer needs in a more coordinated and strategic way. Supporters say it could be a game changer for communities that have too often been left out of the economic opportunity, while also addressing critical labor shortages across key industries. But how will it actually work? Who stands to benefit the most? And what will success look like, not just in theory, but on the ground in neighborhoods across Chicago and beyond? Joining me now to break it all down is Matt Bruce, Executive Director of the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance. Matt, welcome to Chicago Newsroom 2.0.
Thank you.
Let's start at the top. So what is the Job Ready Initiative, and what programs is it specifically trying to solve that existing workforce programs really haven't been able to?
Sure. So Job Ready Illinois, or jobreadyil.com, is a free online workforce development resource available to all residents of the state. And actually the impetus for it was the onset of work requirements related to our benefits programs, SNAP and soon to come Medicaid. So last summer, the federal government passed changes to the SNAP program and the Medicaid program in a bill called H.R. 1. And what that did is introduced work requirements to SNAP and eventually to Medicaid. So if someone is characterized as what's called an able-bodied adult without dependents, they now have a limit on the number of months that they can receive SNAP benefits starting on February 1st. So it's actually a 3-month limit. So February, March, now we're in April. If you are now subject to work requirements with SNAP, you could be losing your SNAP next month. So that's why Job Ready Illinois came together. One way to maintain your eligibility for SNAP is to be enrolled in a qualified work program, to sort of be connected to the workforce development system. And that's what Job Ready Illinois creates. It creates, I describe it as like the front porch, right in front of the front door of the workforce system. Because one of the challenges we have with our workforce system is we do have lots of qualified work programs that are training people to get a job, say in clean energy, or a pre-apprenticeship program in the trades, or an apprenticeship program in information technology. But we don't have enough qualified work programs to serve all of those individuals that need to be enrolled in a program if they want to use that way of maintaining their SNAP. So what Job Ready Illinois does is creates an online version that has unlimited slots. So as many people that need to in the state of Illinois can sign up for Job Ready Illinois, maintain their SNAP and eventually Medicaid eligibility while they are sort of on their journey towards the workforce system and a job that's right for them.
Oh, wow, that is great. Well, from your vantage point at the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance, what makes this initiative different? And are we talking about better coordination, more funding, or fundamentally a new approach to workforce development? What does that look like?
It's really that last item you mentioned. It's a fundamental new approach in that this sort of online program, which is qualified for something like SNAP, didn't exist before. We didn't really need it before because SNAP work requirements, our state had a waiver from them. The other thing that's unique about it is it's a real public-private partnership We built this in close partnership with the state of Illinois, the Department of Human Services, which is where SNAP is run through. They approved this program. It's on the governor's approved list of work programs, but it was created by a public-private partnership. Foundations, that's who I work for. I work for the Chicago Community Trust. Our Funder Alliance is hosted at the Trust, and we get a dozen foundations to work together on workforce development. We invested and created this program in collaboration with the state, but also with Cook County. It needed to have a public sponsor, and Cook County was our public sponsor because we were already in a public-private partnership with them. So that's really what's unique about it. It's how it came together, how it was created in this public-private partnership, and it has the capability of offering unlimited slots for those who want to get on their journey towards the workforce system.
And so who stands to benefit most from this effort? Are there specific communities or industries or job sectors?
So the group of individuals across the state that stand to benefit most, and why we launched the site when we did, are those SNAP recipients who need an option to maintain their eligibility, who need a work program like this. Maybe they can't get to a training program because we have a big state, there's rural areas, there's people with transportation limitations, or maybe they're trying to get into a work program and they just haven't got into it yet, and they need a month or two, or the Job Ready Illinois can sort of build a bridge of time where they can sort of keep them eligible for SNAP while they're figuring out what work program is right for them. Ultimately, though, we see Job Ready Illinois as a shared resource to the entire workforce system. So it does have these online courses, this online content, and because it's free and it's online, really any number of workforce programs across the state can benefit from its content. So I'll give a concrete example. There is content in Job Ready Illinois that's about knowing your rights as a worker, which really every worker should know. Every worker should know how to guard against wage theft, how to know what they should expect in the workplace. And we have lots of programs around the state who are doing career readiness training or job skill training, and they just don't have time to have the content about knowing your rights as a worker. And so now, because this is free and online, they can add it. They can sort of make it a supplement to their work program that they have now. That's true for all the content that will be on Job Ready Illinois, and any number of programs across the state will be made better because they have access to this free content.
Got it. And one more question, if I may. What should success look like, maybe say a year or two from now, and how will the public be able to measure whether this initiative actually is delivering on its promise?
Well, we will be able to measure some very concrete things. So one very concrete measure of success will be for SNAP eligible individuals that need a program like this to maintain their eligibility. We'll be able to see them submitting their Job Ready Illinois enrollment verification to Department of Human Services and showing that, yes, I've maintained my eligibility, and we can count the number of people that have completed the program to that extent. The next sort of measure of eligibility is we want to help people on their workforce journey. So Job Ready Illinois should be connecting them to the next opportunity. And so we will be doing things like surveying the user base, working with our partners that we are going to be referring people to, and see, like, did you get referrals from Job Ready Illinois? Or were you using Job Ready Illinois? Did it connect you to an opportunity? In a year's time, we hope to see it helping more people maintain their eligibility for benefits, but also being a real help to them on their workforce journey.
Well, Matt, thank you for joining us, and here's wishing you much success with the initiative. On the other side of the break, Faith in Place's Reverend Nicolette Faison joins Suzet to discuss how her organization is putting its money where its mouth is in the battle against climate change. Stay with us.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
Got something to say about Chicago? Now's your chance to be heard. Chicago Newsroom 2.0 is launching Opinion, a new segment where everyday Chicagoans take the mic. Whether it's a neighborhood issue that's been ignored, a citywide concern that needs attention, or a fresh idea that could change our city, we want to hear from you. Submit your commentary at cantv.org/opinion. If selected, we'll invite you on air to share your perspective with all of Chicago. Experience the power of community television.
Across Chicago and communities throughout Illinois, the impact of climate change isn't just an environmental issue, it's a community issue. From rising temperatures to uneven access to green space, the effects are often felt most in neighborhoods that have historically had the least investment. But there are also opportunities to build healthier communities, expand economic pathways, and create solutions that are rooted in both environmental stewardship and equity. Our next guest is working at the intersection of all three. Reverend Nicolette Faison is the Illinois Outreach Director for Faith in Place, a nonprofit that partners with communities of faith to advance environmental justice and sustainable practices. Reverend Faison, welcome to the newsroom, and thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
Of course. Why don't we start with helping our audience understand the need? So for viewers who may not immediately connect tree coverage to quality of life, why does expanding the tree canopy matter, especially in neighborhoods that have historically had less access to green space?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because tree canopy actually makes a world of a difference.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't really realize this, but off bat, tree canopy actually increases the value of your home. It also has this very interesting tie to people would consider safe communities.
Okay.
I, however, kind of see safe communities more as the fact that tree canopy offers 2 to 9 degrees more cooler than when you have a street that does not have it, for example.
Okay.
So communities that don't really have a lot of tree canopy typically could be up to 45 degrees hotter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Understood. So we often hear the term environmental justice.
Yes.
How does the tree canopy and workforce community grant specifically address disparities between neighborhoods that have abundant green space and those that don't?
Well, I feel like with Chicago, we all know that not every neighborhood is built the same.
That's right.
It is an incredible thing to witness how much of a disparity there is amongst neighborhoods. And a lot of that actually is tied into our environment. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of people realize this, but if you look at a map of where our food deserts are in the city of Chicago, you can lay a map of where tree canopy lacks on top of it, and it'll be virtually the same thing.
Wow.
The reality is that environmental justice and the way that we're trying to address this in the community is to make sure that we have green space and not just grass, right? But tree coverage. It helps for people to want to go outside. Mm-hmm. I think what a lot of people don't realize when it comes to environmental racism is who actually gets to be outside, you know?
That's right.
And so in a lot of our communities, folks don't frequent out there. They need to get on reliable public transportation, but who wants to wait for your bus or your train when it is completely hot and just overwhelming you?
That's right.
I feel like it was 30, 40 years ago where we had one of the worst heat waves in the city of Chicago. We had about 95 people dying.
1995, actually.
Right? And so let's think about that. What does that mean, and who are those people most affected? Oftentimes, those are from these same exact communities we're talking about. And so tree canopy and making sure we have that is a response to the inhumane treatments that people experience.
Yeah.
And I think if we're also going to be real about it too, our youth should be able to experience all seasons. We don't think about how trees play a role in that and being able to see the lifespan of things. Why should that only be limited to certain kids?
That's right.
You know?
Wow, this is really incredible work. I don't think people really understand what tree canopies are and how important they are to our communities, especially communities that are experiencing other aspects of injustice and disinvestment. Wow. So there are workforce opportunities when it comes to tree canopies as well. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I would love to.
So this isn't just about planting trees, right? It's also about creating jobs. What kinds of workforce opportunities are tied to this grant, and who are you hoping will benefit from them?
So I think that the workforce opportunities is a little bit more out of the box than what people would think of.
Okay.
Because the thing is that a lot of people don't realize that they have a love of trees and planting until they actually get the opportunity to do it. And so as we just talked about before, in terms of environmental racism or injustice, right? Not having that exposure kind of limits your thoughts of who you can be when you grow up. This grant, however, we're looking at a 3-year span. We want to see actual retention with our trees. So we're not just looking to make sure you plant 100 trees. How do we keep 100 trees?
Sure.
You know? And so what that looks like for us in terms of how we are doing our grant is that this is all about maintenance. And so maintenance looks like pruning trees, watering trees. Did you know it takes 10 gallons a week for 1 tree?
Wow, no, I didn't know that.
Right? And so someone has to do that work. This creates a little bit of a buffer, or I should say funding rather, for us to hire local.
Okay.
So I get the opportunity to meet a lot of landscapers and be able to hand their information off to other people in similar communities and be like, hey, they're actually already doing this kind of work. This is great. So we're helping with that local economy, a lot of independent folks. We also have folks that are getting training and certifications, becoming master arborists or master gardeners. And so that also creates opportunities for them to do this work even further.
Sure.
And then let's get into the youth, right? We have an intergenerational program here. You have people that are pulling upon young folks to do the watering, to help with the digging. And so now we're also exposing young people to opportunities they probably didn't consider before, or they saw one way or the other. And so this kind of creates opportunities for them to get involved, for them to get a little bit of pay, and to kind of reconsider the opportunities that are out there for them.
That's right. Wow. I even recently saw a video or something posted talking about just trees and embracing trees and being at one with trees, and how that also helps with mental health stability and regulating various emotions and things like that. So that's probably an unintended consequence of doing this type of work, would you say?
Absolutely. The thing that people do not realize how much we need trees.
Sure.
You know, that's a huge part of like faith in place, of just understanding that we see climate crisis as a spiritual crisis.
Okay.
And it's a separation from ourselves, from our communities and our environments. And so we don't think about going outside and hugging trees.
Right.
Now, I'm originally from New York.
Okay.
Trees, yes, they exist, but the idea of just frolicking in a garden never really comes to mind, right? And so the idea that you kind of feel a different kind of connectedness, you start to notice things a little bit more, and you're breathing fresh air.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize this either when it comes to trees, is that trees play a huge part in kind of mitigating our pollution.
Absolutely.
Right.
They soak up the debris from the air. Wow, that's incredible. So Faith in Place, you just mentioned that. Faith in Place works closely with faith-based organizations as well as community organizations. How are local residents and institutions being engaged in this effort, and why is that piece so important to the success of the program?
Community is important to the program.
Okay.
Just flat out.
Yeah.
This is for community. This is for the people that we care and love. This is for future generations. Investing in trees is investing in your future, right?
Yeah.
We need everyone to be involved in this kind of work. Let me tell you about Rainbow Beach.
Okay.
So one of our grantees, because this is our second round, so
Okay.
one of our grantees last cycle was the Rainbow Beach PAC. And for them, they kind of saw Rainbow Beach as this place that has been forgotten, given up upon. There's a lot of stereotypes and associations made back in the 90s, 2000s, so people did not frequent there.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna be real, that also meant that the Chicago Park District wasn't necessarily investing in that area either.
Right.
And so their thought behind this is, if we plant more trees, people will come. We believe that trees will create community. So this is not a faith-based organization. This is a group of community members of all different ages that truly love Rainbow Beach. They love South Shore, and they want to see people return to the land.
Sure.
And so how do we best get people back onto our beaches, starting to utilize public space? And that's what we need, and that's what we want to see. We want people to feel invested in the place that they live in and cherish it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I even noticed last summer that there was this vibrancy around Rainbow Beach, and I just assumed that it was the Park District making some investments, and that was what was bringing people back. Never had a clue that this was also faith in action, community in action, really. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the long-term impact. Because as you said, this is about investing in our future. So planting trees is one thing, maintaining them and ensuring long-term impact is another. So talk a little bit more about how the program thinks about sustainability over time, both environmentally and economically?
As I mentioned, this is a 3-year grant. And so we're really thinking about the long haul here.
Okay.
The idea with tree retention is that within the first year, you're not going to see too much happen, right? It's kind of, it's still kind of getting its feels a little bit. But year 2, year 3, you start to see that kind of change occur. And so the thing with trees is that they're not going to really hit maturity until several years later on.
Right.
But if we start seeing these trees as landmarks, if we start seeing these trees as like, oh yeah, you just make a left at the corner of, the oak tree, right?
Right.
It starts feeling like it's better, more or less part of community.
Sure.
And the thing about trees and what we're doing here is that for every $1 invested, we get about $1.89 back.
Okay.
This actually contributes to about $1.6 million across the United States, our work with trees. So tree and workforce development are very much deeply tied, and we're hoping to see a little bit of that happen here in the Chicagoland area.
That's fantastic. Well, Reverend Faison, I love the program. Thank you so much for coming on today to just talk to us a little bit more about it and help our viewers understand not just what the benefits of the grant will be, but really what the benefits are of having trees in our communities and tree canopies and how they can begin to mitigate some of the injustices that we've seen in some of our communities over time.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
On the other side of the break, Chicago Latino Theater Alliance's Jorge Valdivia joins Dee to talk about the upcoming Chicago Latine Playwright Festival. Stay with us.
Got something to say about Chicago? Now's your chance to be heard. Chicago Newsroom 2.0 is launching Opinion, a new segment where everyday Chicagoans take the mic. Whether it's a neighborhood issue that's been ignored, a citywide concern that needs attention, or a fresh idea that could change our city, we want to hear from you. Submit your commentary at cantv.org/opinion. If selected, we'll invite you on air to share your perspective with all of Chicago. Experience the power of community television.
On the next episode of The Journey Continues, hosts Monica Fox and Sarah Jane Charles are joined by Marion Shuck, who shares the loss of her husband Reggie and her courageous decision to become a living kidney donor for her brother. One story, one family, a movement that saves lives. Tune in Thursday, May 7th at 7 p.m. on CanTV 19, cantv.org, the CanTV Plus app, or YouTube. Experience the power of community television.
Chicago's theater scene has long been one of the most vibrant in the country. But for many Latino artists, access to stages, resources, and visibility hasn't always matched the depth of talent across our communities. That's exactly where the Latine Playwright Festival, Inicios, is working to change. The festival is designed to spotlight emerging Latino voices, provide a platform for new work, and create a space for stories that reflect the richness, complexity, and diversity of Latino experiences right here in Chicago. It's not just about performance, it's about pipeline, opportunity, and building the next generation of playwrights and theater makers. Joining us now to talk more about the vision behind the festival and what audiences can expect is Jorge Valdivia, Executive Director of the Chicago Latino Theater Alliance. Jorge, welcome to Chicago Newsroom 2.0.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Let's start with the big picture. What is the Chicago Latine Playwright Festival, and what inspired the Chicago Latino Theater Alliance to actually launch this festival 3 years ago?
Yeah, so again, thanks for having me. Inicios basically translates into beginnings. It is the younger sister festival of our very well-known Destinos Chicago International Latino Theater Festival, which has been around going on 9 years. 3 years ago, we decided to launch another festival that focused on bringing visibility for Latina playwrights in the Chicagoland area and helping elevate the narratives, stories of the Latina community. And so this will be the third iteration of the festival. It is a festival that is intended to center Latina playwrights from the Chicagoland area, and it's been a wonderful experience to really see the fruits of the labor of Chicago's vibrant, robust, super talented Latina playwrights. The stories are very diverse. They're very, in some cases, hilarious. In other cases, heart-wrenching. And I think that they're stories that allow us to really reflect and think about our lived experiences.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our city.
Thank you.
And speaking of our city, Chicago has no shortage of talent, but access is often the challenge.
Right.
How does this festival help create a pipeline for emerging Latino playwrights, and how does it also help them develop and then showcase their work?
That's a great question. I think that it's really important for us to recognize a few things. That Chicago's Latina population is at around 33% of the entire Chicago population. We are also the majority of CPS students. And when you look at that data and you realize that only that Latina actors represent a mere 5% of Chicago's theater industry, I think that really says a lot about the inequities that we are seeing. And so our job as the Chicago Latino Theater Alliance is to raise awareness around these inequities and to really help highlight the need to do something about this. And so the pipeline that we're creating is intended to really help nurture and grow the work of the different fellows. We launched a fellowship program, a Latina fellowship program, in January of this year. And so we have been paying the fellows to work alongside a very talented, amazing playwright, artist, Dr. Ray Andujar, who's been working with this group of fellows. And so Inicios, the Chicago Latine Playwright Festival, is going to be where they, along with you, me, and everyone in Chicago, will have an opportunity to witness the fruits of their labor, what they've been working on. We'll have a chance to see the works of 3 amazing fellows and 3 semifinalists who were invited to form part of our very first Writers' Circle.
Wow. And I especially love that it's a paid fellowship. So
yes.
Humble nod to you.
Absolutely.
How about walking us through what audiences can expect? Like, what makes this theater experience unique and compare it to regular or traditional theater productions?
That's a great question. I think for people who are not familiar with stage readings, it's really important for us to help them understand, walk them through what they can expect, right? I think that when you go to a typical theater production, you expect props and you expect set design and people that are actors that are dressed in character, right? The stage reading is really all about listening to the text. You have actors in front of you. There are no props. All you have is the actors in front of you who are reading through a script. And I think that there's something really magical about sitting through a stage reading because it allows you to use your imagination and really sit with the text, sit with those stories that the actors are bringing to life. I think that some people might think like, oh, geez, why would I pay to see something like that? First of all, it's free. But second of all, I think it really challenges all of us to really sort of to slow down a little bit, especially in the time of social media and even AI. Being able to sit with something where you're able to just sit back and listen to someone. It's almost like listening to a podcast or listening to the radio. I think those moments in life are magical, and I think that they're important.
Thank you. And I believe we both would recognize that representation certainly matters, not just on stage, but also behind the scenes. So how is the Alliance working to ensure that Latino creatives are supported across the entire production process?
That's a great question. And I think when you look at the breadth of our work, you'll realize that since the Chicago Latino Theater Alliance was founded almost 10 years ago, what we've done is really we've worked really hard to address the inequities that we have seen. You and I are sitting here across the table from one another, and I am making sure that people understand the statistics behind Chicago's Latino population versus the lack of representation that we see among Chicago theater actors. When you look at the funding that is available and distributed in the Chicagoland area for art specifically, Latino arts organizations are only getting 6% of all arts funding. And so it's through these moments that our job is really to raise visibility and awareness around that. And so while we're also doing that, our work speaks for itself. And so we have created Destinos of Chicago International Latino Theater Festival, where we work with local Latino theater companies and other non-Latino theater companies who commit to elevating, centering, and raising the profile of Latino stories, Latino playwrights. On the other end of the spectrum, during our spring programming, we have also launched, earlier I mentioned the Latino Playwright Fellowship Program, and this is the very first year that we did that. That will all culminate with Inicios Chicago Latine Playwright Festival. We also have something else called Latine Theater Artist Week. It is a week-long series of events, workshops that are free, and we invite casting directors for open casting call day. We offer workshops that are intended to provide professional and artistic development opportunities for actors and artists and Latino theater professionals. So I think that we do quite a bit, and all of that is intended to address the very same issue that you just mentioned.
Okay. A lot of information and lots going on.
It is, I know.
And before we close this conversation, Jorge, can you tell us how people can get involved or come out and see any of the performances?
Absolutely. So this is an invitation. Please come out and support Latine playwrights. There are going to be 6 amazing stories, 3 days, 2 stories a day. And all of the information for Inicios is on our website. That's www.galataclata.org.
Wonderful. Well, Jorge, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing information about the Chicago Latine Playwright Festival.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you.
Dr. Suzet?
We want to hear from you, Chicago. Got an opinion on a topic you've been wanting to get off your chest? Can TV is the place to do it. Share your opinion with us in 250 words or less. If your submission is selected, we'll invite you to join us on the air to present your perspective to the entire city.
Suzet, is it fair to say that since you last hosted the Newsroom, that you've been rather busy with life?
It is fair to say that life has been lifing, Dee. I got married to the most exceptional man, Victor Lagrune, in the company of some of our dearest friends, including the one and only Dee Atkins. And it was recently announced that effective May 11th, I will have the honor of serving as the next president and CEO of the Chicago Loop Alliance, where I get to champion for the continued success of the city that I love so dearly.
Suzet, your wedding was as exquisite as that beautiful gown, my friend. I just love it when wonderful things happen to wonderful people, so I couldn't be more happy for you.
Thank you, Dee. And thank you, Chicago, for making time for CAN TV and Chicago Newsroom in your busy day.
Until we meet again, be well and be well informed.